So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual chapter of IACT IMDHA for goodness gracious, what month is this? August already, Karen. August 2024. We are so happy that you have showed up to join us. I am your host, Michael Watson, and I am joined by my wonderful assistant, Karen Hand. Say hello, Karen.
Hi there. So glad you guys are here.
Yeah. Was that the entire hello?
Well, I could say more. I could say how much I am in love with you. I could say we've got some treats for you tonight. We're going to talk about covert hypnosis, but I thought I would just sit here and pipe down
Yeah.
and let you dance. That's not like me, but I thought I'd try it and see how it worked.
Well, all right. So we are going to talk about covert hypnosis as a feature, and then of course we have our guest, Kryssa, that will be introduced to you more formally by Karen in just a little while before we begin that segment. And I am certainly looking forward to that. So, Karen, have you ever been hypnotized covertly?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I not only have I been hypnotized covertly, I hypnotize covertly, sometimes on purpose,
you do.
sometimes quite.
Sometimes I'm so covert at it that I don't even realize that I've been doing it, and then
Is
somebody says, "Wow, Michael, you hypnotized me."
I was going to say, were you ever a mother? But no, that's just the way it is. Mothers hypnotize all the time, right? And they probably haven't had any, well, some of them have, some of us haven't had any formal training. That doesn't mean they're not hypnotizing certain things. I had a client with a spider phobia, and as we went back to the first time she was afraid of spiders, she was 3, and her mother told her, "Don't touch that thing, it'll kill you." Right at that moment, she accepted that suggestion, generalized it out to all sorts of things. And for 40 years, she held on to a spider phobia so that she would never touch it and wouldn't die. Now, let me tell you something. Her mother was not a trained hypnotist, but boy, was that a suggestion, a post hypnotic suggestion that lasted more than 40 years.
Some of the most powerful suggestions we've ever received came from our mothers and fathers. I've never been a mother myself, but it has been my first name from time to time.
Not just moms and dads, teachers, coaches, your best friend. Have you ever been feeling okay walking down the hallway and your friend approaches you and goes, "Oh, are you okay? You look tired." And instantly, that good feeling that you had is kind of like, "Oh, you go look in the mirror. Am I okay? Maybe, I don't know. Let me check." Right? It can be an instant mood switch. That's a suggestion. But in my opinion, and many of you know that I believe all of this is BS, belief system, right? So, in my belief system, which is all I can share with you because that's what I maintain, in my belief system, hypnosis only happens when a suggestion is accepted. It's the acceptance of the suggestion that makes it hypnosis. Because people throw out ideas and throw out suggestions all the time, and some people take them and some people don't. The throwing out the idea or throwing out the suggestion doesn't make it hypnosis. What makes it hypnosis is the acceptance of the suggestion. How do you think about that, Michael?
I think that's really a lovely way to say it. Essentially, if I hear you correctly, what I'm hearing you say is suggestions that are not received are not hypnotic suggestions because they don't have the quality of being hypnotic. That is of being received and integrated, as they're offered. Yeah, that's really a nice way to say it. One of the things so when we're talking about covert hypnosis, there's a million ways, of course, to do it. Right? We can do it with direct suggestions or embedded commands. Somebody mentioned in the sort of pre-show here tonight something about embedded commands. In fact, yeah, you have one to perhaps share with us in just a little bit, Karen. But embedded commands are one way, but also indirectly. And this is one that you impressed me with because I kept thinking it's not really a suggestion. And I realized it was a light bulb went off one day when I thought, Karen, you are just even more brilliant than I realized. Because
Everybody,
you showed us. I know people usually just don't come to that party quite as quickly as they should, do they? but but you showed us a picture of a parking lot, right? With lines and all of that stuff. And I'm just going to give it back to you. It's your thing, and it was a lovely idea.
Well, I think a parking lot is very hypnotic. And here's the point. You start with a blank slate, and somebody measures it, traces it out, draws a bunch of suggestions on the concrete. And so there are the suggestions, which way to drive, where to place your car, where not to place your car. So if you take this suggestion to take your car off the street and put it in the parking lot, then you take those suggestions in varying degrees. Somebody who goes into the parking lot in the perfectionist trance will park perfectly between the lines.
Yeah.
Somebody who goes into the parking lot in the my little red car is cuter than everything in here parks on two lines. Don't touch my car. I mean, they're just taking suggestions in varying degrees. But let me just say one more thing. Everybody on the parking lot, everybody who leaves their car in the parking lot is hypnotizable because they all took the suggestion to take the car off the street and put it in this car park.
Mm,
They didn't just randomly leave it on the street. So all the people in the parking lot are hypnotizable.
sure. You've all heard of highway hypnosis. On the other hand, the thing that's interesting about highway hypnosis is there's that line down the middle. And many people accept the suggestion that driving on the right side of that line is a good idea. So sometimes it's really nice to share a trance with the rest of the community because those suggestions are useful and helpful ones. Just want to make sure that we include that about what side of the road. See, now in England, they're not very good at hypnosis, apparently. I guess that must be it. They're all left-brained or something. It's something like that.
But
But
there's another look at hypnosis, Michael, because if you go to England, it will take a day or two to get used to driving on the wrong side of the road because they do it wrong, obviously. But it'll take you a while to get used to driving on the wrong side of the road. But after you do it for a day or two, you retrain yourself. Repetition is another way of installing a suggestion or accepting a suggestion. You do it over and over and over. We've all, does everybody here look both ways before crossing? That was,
up and down.
all right, that was hypnosis from a long time ago. Because when you were a little bitty thing and you came up to a street with mom, dad, or both, they
Yeah.
grabbed your hand or put their hand in front of you and said, look both ways. Otherwise, you'll be hit by a car and killed. Now, they may not have quite in that way, but that's it. If you don't look both ways, you'll be hurt. It was said over and over and over and over and over again until mom and dad noticed that you were doing it, and then they stopped giving you the suggestion, and you still have it today.
Huh.
Quite automatically, repetition installed that one.
Now here's something that I remember. Just because I've been around for a while. I remember black and white television. Some of you remember black and white television and things that don't even happen on TV. Gosh, I was talking to a guy today who saw a picture of a rotary phone and he said, "How does that work?" It was real interesting. But I'm remembering television commercials for cigarettes, and the reason that I particularly want to mention this one is that one of the things that we do when we're working with people hypnotically is we try to create associations between a particular state that we want to move the client into, and offer some suggestion that takes them there relative to the topic that we're talking about. So, for example, I remember a television commercial for, I think it was Salem cigarettes. I'm almost certain that said, take a puff. It's springtime. And I remember thinking, gosh, if you listen to that and say, oh yeah, I really want to have some of that, especially by the way, if you were in Chicago and they played it in the middle of the winter, you know what I'm saying? Right? We all became smokers in the spring, I think, or best.
Up the ante on that one just a little bit because Salem had the logo or had the jingle. You can take Salem out of the country, but you can't take the country out of Salem. And that came up several times in the commercial. You can take Salem out of the country, but ding, you can't take the country out of Salem. And then they always ended the commercial with, you can take Salem out of the country, but ding.
Stop.
And then everybody had, and it stopped, and everybody then had to end the jingle. By the way, Salem's ultimate goal was to just have very short commercials that just had, you can take Salem out of the country, but ding, just that. And then their ultimate goal was to just be able to play the ding.
Yeah.
And have
Oh,
everybody
nice.
anchored into Salem. And if
Nice.
anybody remembers, show of hands of people who remember that Salem commercial.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you probably remember the ding, do you not? You remember the whole jingle, backward
Yeah.
and forward.
And I remember that Winston tastes good like
Cigarette head oughta if you were a Beverly Hills.
yeah, yeah. So these things got really implanted, and the Marlboro Man. Oh my gosh, so affected Mick Jagger, for example, that a man ain't a man if he doesn't smoke the same cigarettes as me. I can't get no satisfaction, right? The powerful images of gosh, this is somebody I want to. This is what a real man looks like. By the way, the Marlboro Man died of cancer. I might mention if you if y'all didn't know this, but again, there was that compelling image that people wanted to somehow identify with. And it's like, now we're going to have you identify with it through our product.
Yeah.
Powerful hypnosis at work.
Grocery
Yeah.
store. If you go to the grocery store for Campbell's soup, just play along with me because some of you will go too much salt. I don't do Campbell's. Everybody has an idea of what the Campbell's soup section at the grocery store looks like, probably, right? If you go looking for Campbell's, if you go looking for soup, most people buy chicken noodle and tomato. Those are the two biggest sellers for the Campbell's brand. Chicken noodle and tomato, grocery store hypnosis, they're always on the bottom shelf, the very bottom shelf. You go into the Campbell's section, eye level, you're seeing, ooh, bean and bacon. Oh, this new French onion. Oh, this other thing. You're seeing all of these others while you look all through the list until you get down to what you came in for. You might grab something because it takes your attention, focused attention. Remember, you're focused on the soup. This looks good. Oh, I'm going to try that before you ever get down to what you came in for. End caps are the same way. It's grocery store hypnosis.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so I've got a list of things that I wanted to talk about with around this topic. So you'll forgive me if I jump just a little bit, but because we want to allow all the room that we can for Kryssa and talk about this topic as well. But I saw something really interesting today, and I'm thinking about the way that we use metaphors covertly as well, and in order to affect a result. And it was the strangest place. So I don't know if any of you have such bad TV habits as I, but I like to watch Below Deck on the Bravo channel. And Below Deck is basically is a luxury yacht. And they have guests that are on the yacht for this episode, and the crew that are the regular crew that's there every week. And of course it's a reality show, so everybody is microphoned and everybody knows that they're on TV, and some of them are just at their worst behavior. And in this particular case, on this cruise, there was a collection of men and women that were how do I say it? They really wanted to pretend that they were high class on this $1 million yacht, but they had no class at all, obviously. And they ran the crew to, as soon as they came on, the one lady who was like the principal guest insisted that the furniture should be rearranged in the main salon and stuff. She didn't want this chair over there, and I mean, it was just crazy. She objected to everything, all of the food, all the stuff on the first half of the first day. And the crew went and talked to the captain of the ship. And the captain of the ship came out and was standing in the area where they were all getting cocktails. So they're all getting drinks and everybody smiles for a moment, getting their drink. And the captain says, this is my crew, and I really love them because I know that they're going to take very good care of you. As a matter of fact, I love my crew so much that it wasn't that long ago that we had a multi-million-dollar cruise, as a matter of fact. And the people that were on that cruise were so rude to my staff that I told them that we didn't need their money badly enough and we were going to kick them off of the ship and cancel the cruise entirely unless they could change their attitude. And suddenly, the people that were on this cruise were just the sweetest, the most wonderful. Practically, shall we clear our own dishes? It was amazing how effective that was without her directly having to say, you guys need to shape up. And I really was impressed with the way that it worked. So there's, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that was my metaphor. That was the one metaphor I wanted to share.
And it was brilliant.
Okay, well, All right. So let's try something else. How about comparisons, direct and indirect comparisons? I remember an advertisement. Here's another advertisement. Uh, I remember a commercial where they took a piece of chalk, because some of you may remember this, and I could have the product wrong and everything, but this is just how what I remember, 50 years or 60 years or God forbid, 65 years later. They took a piece of chalk and they dipped it into a pot of ink or maybe blue paint, but I think it was ink, and it soaked into the chalk a little bit. And they held it up and they broke the chalk in half, and you could see how the ink had soaked into the chalk. And they explained to them that this was how their particular tooth product was going to soak into the enamel of your teeth in order to protect you from, from bad stuff. As though there's any connection between what happens when you dip chalk into an inkwell and when you brush your teeth. Fascinating stuff.
But it is influence, persuasion, and it is a little bit of strategic trickery, which is a little bit of what we do sometimes as we're helping somebody move off a limiting belief onto a belief that they can believe in. It's a little bit of trickery. But I do want you to be cautious because hypnosis happens all the time, whether you're ready or not. Hypnosis is out there. People are throwing out ideas and throwing out suggestions all the time. It becomes hypnotic when you accept the suggestion. Right now, there are lots of covert suggestions going around. And do you mind, Michael, if I share my current favorite one?
I wouldn't mind at all.
Well, play this game with me if you don't mind. So tell me what makes my shirt hypnotic.
Los Angeles,
Go ahead.
Let's see. Kamala? It's Kamala, and it's a blue shirt. Yes.
I saw some recognition there, but now forget about politics for a moment. We all know mine. I'm kind of liberal, but you don't have to be. I love you just the same. You can have any opinion you want. We're just using this to show how covert hypnosis works. What made that hypnotic? What made it hypnotic? The first person who knows, unmute your mic and tell me. What makes it hypnotic?
The focus. I had to lean in and make sense of it. Focus.
So, it's only hypnosis if the suggestion is accepted. So if I'm walking along covert campaigning, right? If I'm walking along and somebody looks at the shirt and goes, oh, what's that? Now I have their focused attention. Now they are working on a puzzle. Well, what is that? And just like Kryssa did, sounding it out. What is that? Comma, LA, comma, Kamala. Kamala. She figured it out. Now, when one figures it out, if it's in alignment with their thinking, they're going to have a dopamine rush. They're going to have some serotonin rush of chemicals in their brain because they just worked out a puzzle. We've got focused attention, which created the trance. They're taking the suggestion themselves and they're working out the puzzle on their own, which causes that rush of dopamine and serotonin, feel-good, happy chemicals. Kryssa smiled when she figured it out, so we know the happiness is going on, and then we have the anchoring of the name to a feel-good chemical.
Yeah.
Someone takes all of those suggestions, I might be able to sway someone who hasn't decided yet.
That's right.
And someone who's decided will go, you know what? I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But the people who like what I'm serving are going along on the journey with me.
I have a suspicion, Karen, that even people who don't agree with it, that you're saying will go, yeah, there is still a part of them. And this is what I think is insidious about this, that we proud of themselves for having figured it out. And when that happens, there is still going to be that little bit of a dopamine rush. And it may be that you will have moved someone's position just a little bit as a result of that. Maybe just a fraction, but to be able to feel good, is a key here.
And we were talking about direct suggestion. Trust me, I'm doing a lot of covert campaigning, but this one is a little more direct.
Now that looks like apostrophe law to me.
That's all right. If you say that apostrophe law, oh no, I get it.
Apostrophe law.
But I am saying that we are not going back is a more direct suggestion. Yeah. And again, I get less focused attention with that than I do with the artwork. I bring that up not to try to convince you, although boy, if I do, would that be great. But what I'm saying is not to convince you, but to show you that you may not know when suggestions are landing.
Mm.
You have to guard yourself and protect yourself and all of our clients when they come to us for hypnosis on purpose. Now, if they've been hypnotized before, if they're really into it, this isn't a problem. But if they have any trepidation at all, or they're unsure, right, that hypnosis on purpose allows for resistance. I don't know what they might be tricking me with.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to develop the rapport. It's so important to have them going along with the acceptance part of the
Mm.
suggestion in order to make it hypnosis.
Yeah. You know, sometimes, however, the best suggestions that a client can receive are the ones that they actually create for themselves. And if you can create a situation that holds something open and invites the recipient of it to put something meaningful in there, amazing things can happen. I just see these are just three things that I've heard on television in the last 24 hours. And again, they do come from political campaigns, and they're happening. It's happening on both sides. So this isn't either side of the aisle here. But somebody is trying to convince you that, ready for this? That person is going to destroy our democracy. See, I don't even know what that means. If you think about it, we really don't know what it means. But I think very quickly, if you have an opinion one way or the other, you'll start filling in the blanks with who they're talking about and destroy in what way our democracy, or what are they going to do, and you've signed on to something, or they're going to ruin everything that we hold dear, which is real interesting because I don't know what we hold dear refers to at all, right? Or they're going to run our country into the ground. Well, our country starts from the ground anyway, so maybe that's not such a bad idea. But what interesting phrases that we hear that have no substance to them at all, and they invite the listener to create a significant meaning out of that communication that then has a real strong hypnotic impact.
Isn't that the way Milton Erickson taught it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah. When he ran for governor of Utah.
It's straight up Ericksonian hypnosis. And it's used by advertisers, and it's used by mothers, and it's used by all sorts of people.
Yeah.
Trained in that.
Actually, we've just, if I can steal just one last minute, I know we're going just a minute over here, but since you mentioned Milton Erickson, that leads us into a discussion of all of those kind of interesting things that happened through and post Milton, including neurolinguistic programming, that made a big deal about submodalities, and the qualities of the images and feelings and thoughts that we have. One of the things that you will notice as you watch the campaigns throughout the rest of this political season is that everybody's campaign ad seems to have the ugliest black and white pictures of their opponent and the most beautiful color pictures of the person that they are campaigning for. And in the right backgrounds too, showing them to be really good people because they associate with, I don't know, carnivals or farmers markets or, or babies or whatever it is that you want to feel good. And the picture of the other guy in black and looking like he must be up to something awful. It's a very, very interesting thing. So I hope that you find this campaign season as entertaining as any other sports contest, because it's become much more something like that. And so we need our T-shirts, by the way, mascots, whatever it is, whatever we can do. So anyway, have a happy campaign season, everyone. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Karen, so you can wrap this segment if you want, and introduce our guest.
It was, this was a convenient way, what everybody's talking about way at the moment, of looking at covert hypnosis. But we're not here to talk about politics or change anybody's mind about that, or even change your mind about hypnosis. What we're here for is to exchange ideas, open your mind to possibilities. And boy, do we have some possibilities ahead of us. Multidimensional consciousness and hypnosis. And we've invited Kryssa Marie Bowman to talk to us about that. Kryssa is the founder of Quantum Journeys Hypnosis. She's a certified hypnotist with an academic background in applied psychology. Kryssa brings a really refreshing blend of scientific research, empirical evidence, and that open-mindedness I was talking about to the table here today. She's a published author. She just has a new book out. Woohoo! Do you have a copy of it that you can show in just a minute? Please grab one.
I didn't bring one in here. Oh, I'm so bad at the marketing part. Oh my gosh. Anyway, yes.
She's a published author of Quantum.
I have like 10 in the other room.
Grab it.
It's called Quantum Journeys, Tales of Multidimensional Healing and Discovery. Yeah.
Testament.
You can find it on Amazon.
Her and her students put that together. And Shelley, did you just, yes, there it is. If you can look at it. Well, Shelley, say something for a moment so we can capture that. Unmute.
Well, I'm very thrilled and honored to be participating, one of the authors in this book with so many other wonderful Quantum Journeys hypnotists. Just, a story, as we all know, a story is worth everything. If you want to really share something that's very difficult to put into exact words, but allowing people to read so many different stories about how the Quantum Journeys experience has changed lives, changed health, changed people's, future. And so it's very, very motivational. And I love the work. I love doing the work. It's a great honor and privilege. And I'm happy to have found Kryssa.
Thank you, Shelley, so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate that. And I am so excited to hear all of this. Kryssa, I can't wait to hear it from you, because a lot of people here know that I have this sort of analytical bent. Michael is a poet. I'm a hit it and get it analytic. And I can't wait to hear about this multidimensional, mind expanding journey. I want you to do it, but before you get into the nitty-gritty of multidimensional consciousness and hypnosis, tell us how the journey got you here. How did you find hypnosis and multidimensional consciousness?
Well, we would have to go all the way back to when I was like 3 or 4. So I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version. As a little kid, I spent the first 8.5 years of my life on a New Age hippie commune, and I used to commune with nature spirits. And my best friend was an imaginary friend. He was an elf, and his name was Drillfee. So cat's out of the bag. That's how woo I was. Okay. Fast forward to moving off of that commune, cycling into public school, getting teased and harassed and bullied for all of these things. And I shut it down. I shut it down hard. And so by the time I was a teenager, I was really moving away from all of that stuff. My mom had actually taught astrology when I was a kid. And so I was like anti all pseudosciences, no to astrology, no to numerology, no, no, no. And I went into applied psychology, which is not the touchy-feely counseling kind. It's the meta-analysis, research, laboratory, learning how the brain learns and works. I also had a near-death experience. So I had sort of a massive infusion of woo that happened in the middle of my anti-woo phase. And that near-death experience, I really kind of repressed it, but it was profound. It changed my life. Not for the better at first. It has since, but because of that being so profound and so beautiful, and me making the choice to come back here into this life, I consequently spent many years very depressed because I kind of really wanted to be back there. That felt like home. This didn't. And I was in an abusive marriage. And when that ended, I found myself suffering with agoraphobia. So depression, agoraphobia, anxiety, I mean, the trifecta, right? And I tried all different kinds of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. I was so lucky that I found a therapist who did EMDR that was willing to come to my house, because this is way before the days of online therapy. And every little thing helped. It's kind of like, each thing I did kind of loosened the lid on the pickle jar a little bit more, but nothing really completely released all of that until I found hypnotherapy. And within 3 sessions, I was finally able to do more than just leave my house for 20 minutes or only go 2 miles away or always have a second person with me whenever I left. Those were like the conditions that I sort of was able to leave my house. I was able to finally do more. And so that's how I discovered hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Now, when I started, I was like, you know what? I've got this background in psychology. This was so helpful for me. I think maybe I want to dust off my, my interest in all things having to do with neuroscience and biopsychology and study hypnotherapy because it helped me so much. And then I wanted to be clinical, right? Because remember, no woo. That didn't happen. The universe had other plans. And so I started having these sessions where people were spontaneously going into past life regression, Akashic records reading, soul contracts, quantum jumps, jumping timelines, meeting spirit guides, communicating with departed loved ones. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? I'm not eliciting these things intentionally. In fact, I really didn't want them to happen, but I didn't feel comfortable just shutting down my clients' experiences because I don't personally want to do it. So I was like, okay, well, you're having this experience because clearly it's important for you to have this experience. It's not up to me to validate it or invalidate it. It has nothing to do with my BS, right? My belief systems don't factor in. You get to have your own experience, and my job is to facilitate a safe space for you to do so and help you move into a place of feeling more empowered. But because I wanted to be responsible about all of this, I did start really hitting the research on more of these woo things because I was like, well, if this is going to keep happening, I kind of need to know what the hell's going on. I felt like I was sort of just like keeping the safe space and helping to facilitate the changes, but I really didn't understand what was going on. Interestingly enough, after all of that research, in the end, I still have come to the conclusion that all of the answers are going to be within the client, not the books I read. So I came full circle back to they've already got all the answers. And it's really just up to me to ask the right questions. So there you go. I think it was more than 20 words, but I think it's still the Reader's Digest version. I took you from 3 to 54. So there we go.
Amazing. You did a great job with it. Now, explain to me what quantum journeys are.
So this was the word, the term. I actually called this a few other things first, and then I had an epiphany, a download, a meditative experience where the whole concept just sort of dropped into my awareness of calling it quantum journeys hypnosis. It was called the healing hallway of answers at the very, very beginning. It's gone through a few incarnations. Quantum journeys hypnosis, which I knew was going to catch a little bit of flack. And I think the guy who came in and was like correcting and critiquing people is one of the people that critiques me. Because when you said that, I was like, I know that tone. Anyway, it very well might be. And so, yeah, that's how the term itself came around. But a quantum journey is basically, it's going into a state of trance, but where you're very intentionally treating, instead of treating the client as the primary and then dealing with their subconscious parts, right? You're doing that, but you're also treating the client as a part of something grander and higher. So the client has subconscious parts, but the client themselves, their conscious analytical mind is a part of something even bigger, the higher consciousness. And you can all kinds of things happen.
Does that reveal itself, or do you draw it out?
We invite it, but very simply. We invited, Shelley's smiling. She's like, yeah. She was actually the first person I ever trained in person, was Shelley Whistler. So she's been at this since the very beginning, pretty much. Anyway, so what I do is when I get them to a certain point, I just say, okay, I would like to ask Karen's higher consciousness or higher self to please come and reveal where we need to go. That's it. And then I'm silent and I wait. And then everything that happens after that is just these beautiful, magical, sort of mystical experiences. But I'm going to give you a little bit of the scientific background into like why this is a very valid approach to hypnosis.
Oh,
I'm putting the science back in the woo, guys.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Please do that for us.
Okay. All right. Well, first, I'd like to just say that it's funny that you're talking about politics, because one of my little odd jobs, my mom was a politician. I used to do opposition research for her. And when you're talking about like the black and white photos and how it makes everybody, that was my job. My job was to find all the crap on people, and that's going to factor in later in this little presentation too, because there's a point at which you start to realize everybody's just a character playing a role. And that was one of the points at which I started realizing that, because there's this multidimensional human, but I'm only finding the things that support this two-dimensional perception of them, so that we can then feed that to the masses and hypnotize them into voting for my mom. Anyway, but I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Karen and Michael, for inviting me. It's quite a privilege. I'm actually more nervous about this than I was about hypnothoughts. So that's saying something. It's because I just admire you so much, Karen. I've been reading your books since I was a baby hypnotist. So
well, let me tell you, I admire you a lot and fell in love with you the first time I heard you. So please, I just think you're fantastic. So please just share some wisdom with us, Kryssa.
Well, it's a mutual admiration society. So I do see a few familiar faces in here, and some new ones that I don't know. I would love, this is going to be a little bit interactive. I don't want you to just like be talked at by me. So I would love it if you would post in the chat where you're from, just so I can sort of get a feel for like where in the world people are. I know one person in here is actually joining us from Australia, which tickles me to no end. Thank you, Lisa. And I am joining you from a very wet coastal North Carolina post Hurricane Debbie. My front yard is still a bit underwater even now. Let's see. So we have Calgary, New Jersey, New Mexico, Chicago, of course, Southern California, Silver Springs, Maryland. Oh, you're not too far from me, Pittsburgh. Oh, that's great, Florida. Thank you so much. I'm just so tickled to be here and to have such a great audience. Okay, so I'm here to chat with you about one of my very favorite topics, multidimensional consciousness. And then what the heck does that have to do with hypnosis? So the first thing I want to say is hold on to your hats. Wait, I think I'm the only one wearing a hat. I'll hold on to my hat for you. You're actually, if you're a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, a change worker of any sort, you're actually already communicating with your client's multidimensional consciousness. I'm just here to help you identify it and do it on purpose. So no doubt you've all seen that iceberg, Massachusetts, Australia, fantastic. Okay. You've seen that iceberg model of like the conscious and the unconscious, or the conscious and the subconscious, right? Where the top of the iceberg just shows like that little bit, and that's supposed to be the conscious mind, the executive state, like that's the part that's like the analytical, awake, aware. And then the rest of that iceberg is like the subconscious. And there's also the pre-conscious, which is the little tiny bits that just stay right below the surface that you might call up during an exam, or something like that. I posit, if we look at that model, that everything else is the higher consciousness, the ocean, the sky, the sun shining down on the ocean and the sky, the planet that the ocean is like on, all of that would be higher consciousness, which includes that iceberg. So the higher consciousness is not a part of us. We are a part of it, is how I see it. Okay, so let's move away from that one. I'm going to do just a teeny tiny little bit of math, and I'm not good at math, so it will be very small. There's a reason why I didn't go into physics. I went into psychology. I love physics, but more at a theoretical standpoint. And then I'm going to tie it all together. So there's this great Richard Feynman quote that goes, "We can only ever perceive the dimension below the one that we are perceiving from." Feynman was an American theoretical physicist, died in the 80s, and he's most well known for his work in quantum mechanics and particle physics. But what does this actually mean, and how does it fit in with hypnosis? Have any of you ever read the book Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions by Edwin Abbott? No? Oh, One hand? Okay, well, cool. So basically it's these like two-dimensional creatures that exist on a flat surface. It's two-dimensional, right? So we have some lines and we have some geometrical shapes, but they're only ever able to interact with each other like at either a point or a line. They don't know the full shape of anything because they can't ever interact with that until this three-dimensional creature comes along and is able to perceive the full like shape of whatever it is that it's interacting with, because it can see the whole thing instead of just being at that two-dimensional level, right? It's not flat anymore. And so this actually fits in with how human consciousness and the multidimensionality of human awareness works. So we all start off being at effect, right? Where we don't really have much power in the world. We don't have much power over our environment, over the people in it, even over our own bodies at first when we're just little babies. Like the most power we can have is like screaming in order to get what we need, or crying in order to get what we need, or, giggling. Maybe sometimes some of us will use that too. But life is essentially happening to us. Okay, so we're going to use a couple of different metaphors. The first one is going to be a video game. So I liken this life happening to us, or being at effect, as being like the character in a video game. Life is happening, and that life is programming that character without that character's awareness. The character can't grasp this because it's in that dimension, okay? When it evolves to the next dimension, and some people do quickly, and some people don't ever. Okay, there are some people that go through their entire lives feeling powerless and at effect, that life is just happening to them. It's sad. Thank goodness there's hypnotists in the world to help them. Hopefully they find us, right? But so that next level is going to be where they take a more active approach to the programs that they notice they are running, picking and choosing, becoming at cause instead of at effect. I'm going to call this the player mode. This is the player of the video game, as opposed to the character in the screen, right? We're playing, we're choosing what to interact with instead of just being the character that's like, everything's happening to me. All right. And so we can make this choice or that choice, perceive things this way or that way. It alters our internal world, which brings us closer to that whole at cause thing. And I would say this is where most hypnotic change work takes place, helping folks shift from an internal world of being at effect into one of being at cause, moving from powerlessness to empowerment, right? And this is where most of us want to live, and hopefully do more of the time, right? But there's another level. So if we stick with the video game metaphor, the next level up would be the programmer of the game, where we're not just picking and choosing the programs to run. We're not just sitting there playing them, but we're actually coding them in on purpose. So these are the folks that we might say are courageous. They become adept at manifesting their lives with intention, not just their internal world or their physical body with working out or whatever, but the landscape and the environment that they exist within to a large degree, because they're no longer afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone. So when you're in character, you tend to stay in the programmed comfort zone, and anything beyond that is very fearful. When you're in the player mode, you might take some detours and go check some things out, but you're still going to mainly stay within that character's comfort zone. When you move into the programmer, now life becomes more of a playground. You get to play the character, the player that's playing the character even. I would say this would be like folks like Ram Dass, Alan Watts, maybe Osho. There's one rather unlikely one that I can think of that is currently alive right now today, and that's Dolly Parton. At least that's how I view her. And talk about covert suggestions. She was fully freaking aware of the effect that her look would have. And she did it on purpose. She chose that character. She nurtured that character. And that's a look that could have been perceived as a bit threatening if she'd gone a slightly different way with it, right? Like with her attitude, but she didn't. She chose instead to go with being authentic and sweet. And some might even say naive, but look at the woman. There's no naivety there. She knew exactly what she was up to, right? And she's famous for saying that she worked really hard to look that cheap. And she made no apologies. Okay. I would say Dolly Parton is fully embraced and embodies the character of Dolly. And I would even say the characters of Dolly, because throughout time, there's been many characters, and she's really darn good at creating her own reality, her own playground. She literally has her own playground. She has her own amusement park, guys. Okay, so, and of course, there's others out there too, but she's my favorite. So I wanted to use her as an example of what happens when you move into the programmer level and you're no longer the player or the character. Okay, so, and I would venture to say that there's even a level beyond that. The engineer. The engineer would be maybe like our ascended masters, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Vishnu. What I find interesting about this is that striving to reach that level in any sort of competitive sense or to prove your worthiness seems to actually prevent it. So it's like almost the sheer act of desiring to reach that level prevents one from reaching it. There's a built-in sort of like fail-safe switch that is the ego. And of course, there are those that have faked it, but it's not sustainable. I'm sure you've noticed some here and there, like their egos do seem to eventually catch up with them, like cult leaders, and like the false prophets and the gurus that, are really judgy and that sort of thing. So, and I would think that you could even sort of use that as the litmus test. If you are following somebody who seems to be very spiritually enlightened, but then you hear them get very judgy about others, chances are they're not all that enlightened, right? Because those people who reach that level of awareness, the sort of engineering level, those ascended masters, they don't judge those that are at the other levels, the lower levels of awareness. They don't perceive them as like better. They're not better than anybody else, right? I mean, every single one of them has to some degree stated to treat everyone with kindness and compassion. Every one of them, that we're all one in some way or another, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty good litmus test right there. So if the character level is primarily marked by the emotion of fear and the player level is marked by courage, and then moving into the programmer level would be marked by curiosity, right? Because it's a playground, so you want to go play in it, so you're going to get real curious about it. Then the engineering level would be primarily marked by the opposite of fear, which, what do you guys think that is? I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat. What do you think the opposite of fear is? And there's no wrong answers. I'm just going to tell you what my answer is, but it might not be the same as yours. Love, that's good. Pure love, safe. Trust. Lisa, you got it. Trust. But love is definitely a huge part of that because it's really hard to have one without the other, right? I would say the opposite of fear is trust. And I'm sure that a lot of people think it's confidence, right? Nobody said confidence. So like, yay, you guys, right? A lot of people think the opposite of fear is confidence, but I'm sure you can think of people that are very, very confident, but still total jerks, right? You're not moving around in the world with love and trust. So it's not confidence. That's not the special little key to moving into those higher levels of human awareness. I mean, really, like each of these levels is along a spectrum with fear at one end and trust at the other. And human self-awareness takes place along this evolution of trust. That's how I see it anyway, moving from one to the next. And it's less about controlling than it is about surrendering to that next level. You can't do it from an ego-based place because that will bring fear in and control in, which then will prevent you from there's that fail-safe that's keeping you from moving forward, right? It's really more about just surrendering and trust. So it's sort of that concept that like everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay yet, then it's not the end yet. Because these people that are at the higher levels, and I'm not one of them, and I can't even really strive for it, but I can acknowledge it. And a lot of that is because I do a lot of meditation and self-hypnosis. So I'm not there, but I can kind of see it, right? They know and understand that physical death isn't the end. And I got a glimpse of that in my near-death experience. I didn't get to like keep the total trust though. I still got lots of fear later. I'm working my way out, but they realize that physical death isn't the end. It's just a portal to another aspect of dimensionality, just like birth is, just like physical birth is a portal to another aspect of dimensionality. Okay, and so just in case the video game metaphor is falling flat for anyone, because I know we're all different ages here, I have one more quick one that we can use, and that's, I want you to think of the character in a flip book, you know, when you're flipping through and it's like moving. Oh, and Michael took his circus thing down, so my song isn't going to make sense anymore. But anyway, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I can totally incorporate the circus song. Anyway, so you're going through a flip book. And on page 1, it's doing this, and then page 20, and then, you know, it's going through all these little actions as you're flipping through the book. The player mode would be the person who's holding the book and flipping it. Right? You can choose to go forward, you can choose to go backwards, you can open it on page 10, you can open it on page 12, sort of choose your own little adventure, right? The programmer would then be the one who's drawing the character and adding in the environment and the landscape, and now the character's going to jump, and now the character's going to roll. And so maybe that metaphor like sits better with some of you that maybe don't play video games or haven't really ever gotten into that. But so are you seeing now some of the ways that hypnosis might help a person move along the spectrum of multidimensional awareness? Okay, I'm going to get a little bit deeper into this in a moment, a little bit more woo, but I wanted to give you this sort of like sciencey background. Moving into a greater awareness of courage, of curiosity, of compassion, of trust. I have personally found hypnosis to be one of the most effective tools for making these shifts out of powerlessness into empowerment and eventually into trust, greater trust. I have greater trust now than I've ever had ever. That doesn't mean I never feel fear. I definitely do, but I can usually move through it without having it block me. The very fact that I'm here today, while on the tail end of some anxiety about presenting in front of Karen, shows that I've moved into a space of courage and trust to some degree, right? Okay. I mean, Karen, I adore you to such a degree that you are a permanent part of Quantum Journeys hypnosis and you don't even know it. So the ego states to emerge that you did way back when in your Magic Words book, and Jason Linett has it in some of his stuff too. I took that and adapted it for Quantum Journeys hypnosis, giving you full credit, by the way. So you're in there permanently. So going back to that original, oh, what? Go ahead.
I just want to say you've done it very well. I'm very impressed, very amazed. Keep going.
Oh, thank you. All right, so let's go back to that original model of the iceberg of consciousness. So we know that we can use hypnotic trance states to communicate with the parts of our subconscious mind, ego states, subconscious subpersonalities. It depends on your background, but they're kind of all the same thing, these parts, right? In IFS, they're called parts, or the family system. But the one thing that we can all agree on is that they do exist. We can communicate with them, even if they can't be found in a physical location, right? They exist as a dimension of the human personality. And we can communicate with these different subconscious parts simply by eliciting the emotional states or the belief systems involved. We can learn their role, we can learn their purpose, we can learn their job, we can learn how they're doing their job, we can learn when they started doing their job, what invited them to come do this job in the first place, and we can help them evolve into being more helpful and doing their job in a way that doesn't cause harm anymore. We can help them to form committees and so on. So this is at the level of the subconscious. So what about communicating with higher consciousness? If there's a sub, like here's consciousness, if there's a sub, doesn't that imply that there is something above that, right? Okay. So I think the reason a lot of folks struggle with this higher consciousness concept is because, as Richard Feynman said, we can only perceive dimensions below the one we're perceiving from. But there's a hack. It's hypnosis. We can access so much more when we're in a trance state. What if I were to tell you that I've had many sessions with clients where they discovered not only that they were a part of a larger consciousness, and that this larger consciousness contained multiple aspects of which their awareness was only one part, but that they could, from that point of view, have experiences within other lifetimes. So imagine that flip book, and each page is a different lifetime. They can jump around, right? Or they're the player in the game. They can take their character and move it here, or they can play a whole different game, get a different landscape going. And that if they're looking at it from the point of view of our consciousness inhabiting these different dimensions, we can also go deeper down. So let's use the metaphor of the human body, right? If there is consciousness in everything, then there would be consciousness in a single particle, in a molecule, in an atom, in a cell, in our DNA, there's consciousness throughout all of it. We already know that we can communicate with our biological system, right? Because we can create glove anesthesia, for example, because we can cause the heart to beat faster, because we can cause the eyes to feel like they're glued shut. We can cause different temperatures to be felt in the skin. We can have an effect on accelerating the healing rate of a person who is ill or injured. And we can do this by kind of actually the same way that we would talk to a subconscious subpersonality. We would say, I would like to speak to the heart now. And then just ask the questions directly and allow the consciousness of the heart to respond. Now, can we qualify this with scientific measurements? No. Then again, you can't do that with any subconscious subpersonality either, can you? What you can do is measure the outcome later. And if a person gets healthier, bam, we know that it worked, right? We know that it had a positive effect. What if we were able to communicate with not just the consciousness of our body? Well, let's even take that farther. I want to talk to you about like the concept that we are all part of a larger organism. Every cell in our body is part of a larger organism. Our liver cell has never met our left pinky toe. If you tried to convince your liver that there's a toe somewhere attached to the same organism that is attached to, it probably wouldn't believe you. It might even harass you, bully you, dismiss you, invalidate you, call you crazy, right? And yet we know this to be true. These two cells do, or these two parts with many, many cells, but they do exist in the same organism. And so isn't it possible that we ourselves are also part of a larger organism, right? And maybe, just maybe, the relationships that exist between all of these individual cells and individual beings do have a thread of consciousness that we can tap into that moves through all of us, a singularity of consciousness. And while in a hypnotic trance, we can direct our awareness to communicating with the consciousness of anything, of anything, of anything. I once had a session with Stephanie Conkle where I was the client and she was the hypnotist. And she, as we were starting to go through the induction, I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't see it. There's a really big amethyst crystal on my floor behind me, underneath this like glass top table. It started talking to me and it was like, hey, I'm just going to come along for the ride and I'm going to protect you. And I was like, Stephanie, this is crazy, but the amethyst crystal next to me is telling me that it wants to come along for the ride. And I love her. She was like, okay, yeah, the more the merrier, bring it, let's do this. And so I was like, okay, cool. And it absolutely did communicate with me. And it also helped keep me safe. And sometimes it would give me little words of wisdom or like, no, don't go down that path. That's not the right one. We're going to want to stay over here. And I was like, thank you so much for letting me know. So we can communicate with anything that has consciousness, and everything has consciousness is what I'm positing. There is a certain type of induction that we use in quantum journeys hypnosis that makes this easier. And there's this element where basically we invite the higher aspects of the client's consciousness to communicate through them. So instead of us communicating with just subconscious parts, we're also asking for higher consciousness parts to come communicate through the client. And what's interesting is you can get conversations going with higher aspects of the consciousness and the subconscious mind. And they will sometimes, Shelley's going like this. We've all seen it, right? Like the subconscious will have fear. I don't want to change. I don't want to do the thing. And then the higher consciousness, I stay out of the way when this happens, by the way. I'm not directing anything. The higher consciousness will come in and be like, it's okay. You're safe. It's fine. And actually, it's providing most of the therapy, not me. And so we're treating the person as if they are simply a part of their higher consciousness. We do this by, it's a very specific thing. And some of you have probably already used this as part of like a confusion induction, where you might refer to the person in first person, then third person, then first person, then third person, sort of jumping back and forth, causing a bit of confusion, which then deepens the trance. Well, we do this very much on purpose in order to then elicit communication. Some people call it channeling, but I mean, channeling is also like when you're having a subconscious part speak through you, that's also channeling. It's just channeling at a different level, right? But so when we're talking, doing the induction and we put the person in the third person and we say, for example, okay, I would like to ask Karen's higher consciousness to please come through and reveal what we need to do for XYZ, whatever the issue is that they're coming. Or if they're just looking to explore, I would like to invite Karen's higher consciousness to please reveal where we need to go for, information on a past life. Or maybe you had another lifetime, and it's not always past, by the way. Maybe you had another lifetime where you were doing very similar work to what you're doing now. And wouldn't it be helpful, instead of reinventing the wheel, just go to that lifetime, grab some of that wisdom and knowledge and bring it into this lifetime, right? I've done that. I've actually done that. And I think a lot of the people that are in quantum journeys hypnosis have also done that. I know Shelley did. We did one together, in fact, the Lemuria one, which I won't out you too much, but like we've done it, right? It can happen. You might have another lifetime where you were just a highly knowledgeable priest or priestess or scientist or doctor or something, and it would be helpful to have that information to come through. And so this is how we do that. And we don't lead. We never lead. The higher consciousness of the client leads. We just ask the questions, go, where do we need to go? Oh, what's there? Oh, please, when you get through this doorway or this portal or this whatever that we're going through in order to explore whatever it is that you need to explore for whatever purpose you came to us for, please just share whatever you're experiencing. And we don't even say what you see because not everybody's visual, myself included. I'm not super visual. I'm a little bit, but we'll say, what are you experiencing? What are you sensing? And they're the ones who are telling me. And what's interesting is as they're doing this, they deepen their own trance. So this can result in channeling all sorts of stuff, not just higher dimensional aspects of our consciousness, but learning things about other lifetimes, soul contracts and agreements that we made for this particular lifetime. Like I actually found out what one of my greater purposes is here. And guess what? I'm living it. Yay, right? So that's good. And I mean, I want you to just consider, like, when you can make that kind of contact, whether or not it's quantifiably, measurably true, if it feels true, if you sense that there is greater support for you, that you are not alone in the world, that you have spirit guides, helpers, angels, higher dimensions of your own consciousness, if we can communicate with all of this, and you feel safe and you can move even farther into trust, things get less scary. And if we can communicate with the consciousness of our own heart or liver or pinky toe, as well as aspects of ourselves that are greater than this tiny little meat suit that we're walking around in right now, then we could also communicate with anything, right? What about water? Can we communicate with water? Well, we know that we can because Dr. Masaru Emoto has already done that research and brought us oodles of replicable research on the effects of human thoughts on water crystals. There's a book called The Hidden Messages in Water. It's Dr. Masaru Emoto, if you want more information. What about plants? Yes. Dr. Lynn McTaggart has conducted numerous studies on human thought intentions directed at seedlings from across the world, 8,000 miles between University of Arizona and Australia. And she had control groups, and then she had the group that the humans were directing their thought intentions to, and the ones that were receiving the thought intentions were growing healthier and faster or more robust. You can read all about that in her book, The Intention Experiment. I have a loblolly pine right out in my front yard who once told me his name is Louie. I told him I thought that was a funny name for a tree. And he said that most trees find human names adorable, kind of like humans find puppies, like cute. Trees find humans just adorable and cute. Speaking of puppies, how many of us are already communicating with the consciousness of other animals in the form of our pets? How many of you are positive that your pets can read your mind sometimes and vice versa? Yeah, okay. So there is actually evidence of this too, that they can communicate, and they do so telepathically in pictures. And so I'm gonna actually ask you to just play with this. If you have a pet, okay, if you have a dog, I think cats can do it too, but if they're not in the mood, you're going to find out if they received the message. So try it with your dogs if you have a dog. Go ahead and keep doing it with the cat anyway, because eventually they'll come around, But just picture something that your dog would respond well to. And make something that you can follow through on. Like, don't picture his best friend or her best friend if you can't actually go visit the best friend, but or their dog best friend, but like a treat or their favorite walk, or, something that that you can actually follow through on. And don't say anything. Just call their name loudly in your mind and picture that thing, whatever that thing is, and look at them and see if they receive it and start to get really excited. And if you're saying walk and you're picturing a walk, see if they actually go get their leash and they start jumping around. You haven't said anything. You haven't moved anything. All you've done is just direct your awareness to this thing, your consciousness speaking to your dog's consciousness, or not speaking, but communicating, right? And so I invite you to try that. And if you do, let me know how it goes, because I'm an intrinsically curious person and I want to know. I've actually forged a tentative friendship with a crow here that likes to hang out in the loblolly pine named Louie. The crow hasn't given me its name yet, though. I refer to it as a boy, but I don't know. I can't. How do you know? I have no idea how to tell. But it brings me little gifts. It brought me a little mermaid trinket toy, a little metal mermaid a few months ago. It brings me string. It brought me a button once. It just random trash that I think it thinks will be useful, because it's like, oh, she's human. These are human things. Let's bring her some human stuff, And I give it peanuts to say thank you for all the trash, for all the sparkly, lovely trash. So look, if we can communicate with our bodies, even at a cellular level, and we can communicate with other three-dimensional life forms like our pets, and we can communicate, we know this, with water, of which our bodies are mostly comprised of. So imagine how you can communicate with your body just through the water in your body and the water that you're drinking, infusing it with positive intentions, drinking basically a magical healing elixir every time you send positive healing intentions into your water. If we can communicate with all of these aspects of our consciousness currently residing in higher dimensions, and by the way, it's not always helpful to go too high. It really isn't. Like, I have had clients where they started channeling an aspect of their higher consciousness that kind of really didn't care all that much about the human life. It was like, oh, whatever, that's going to be over in a blink. Just who cares about your career? Just do whatever you want to do. We'll see you later. That's not going to be helpful if they're coming to you for career advice, right? It might be helpful if they're coming to you for soul arc advice and wisdom, but not so much should I marry this person? Should I go take this job? It's kind of like, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. You're only there for a brief period. So it's not always helpful to go that high. But so if we can communicate with all of these higher dimensions and lost loved ones, then what's to say that we're not also able to communicate with transdimensional or interdimensional beings, like nature spirits, like extraterrestrials, like spirit guides, orbs, Angels? Yeah. I just want you to think about that. What if we could communicate with our planet? What if we already are? What if it's been communicating with us all along? Instead of telling it what we want, what if we just ask and listen? And so with that, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Arthur Schopenhauer. Let me pull it up on my computer. It is. I just had it sitting onto the side. Okay, so the total number of minds in the universe is one. In fact, consciousness is a singularity phasing through and within all beings. So again, imagine for a moment how it would affect your clients, yourself, to get a glimpse of your own multidimensional consciousness. That sense of support, of love, of nurturance, of not being alone in the world, of knowing that you're a part of a much larger organism of consciousness. And if you still find yourself highly skeptical of all this, that's perfectly okay. I don't mind at all. I think a true skeptic is someone who doesn't automatically close their mind to everything. They leave their mind open to be informed. They're open to the data, to the empirical evidence, to the experience. But if after all of this, you're still like, I don't know if I believe in all this, I want to leave you with one more Arthur Schopenhauer quote, and that is that all truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. I went through that as a kid. Second, it is violently opposed. I went through that as a slightly older kid. And then third, it is accepted as self-evident. I personally have accepted it as self-evident. It's no longer even woo for me. And I don't even really like to use the term spiritual because I feel like all of this is going to have scientific explanations in no time. In my lifetime, we're going to have a lot more understanding of the science of consciousness. Anyway, so thank you, everyone. And if you're looking for more instruction on how to use the concepts of communicating with multidimensional consciousness with yourself and your clients, then feel free to reach out to me and I can hook you up with the Quantum Journeys Hypnosis Academy. It's a dual certification course. So you get two certifications, one from me and one from IHA, International Hypnosis Association. But for now, I'd love to take any questions that you might have about this little presentation or comments or even criticisms, if I must, because I'm trying to keep my ego over here.
Well, I would just like you to announce, I'm going to put it in the chat, but announce your email so that we can get in touch with you and some people who watch the recording can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so it's Kryssa, Kryssa, and here I'll type it in, at quantumjourneyshypnosis.com.
Let me repeat that, Kryssa, because some people are going to be seeing the recording, but they won't see anything that you type in. So it's Kryssa at quantum
Kryssa.
Kryssa at Quantum Journeys Hypnosis. Okay, make sure Journeys.
Yeah.
I heard Journey the first time, so Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.
Everybody does. Yeah, it's journeys, plural. Yeah, even students still say journey. I can't undo it. I don't know. Lisa just said it's the best.
There is only one journey.
Multiple multi-journeys.
Well, within the sessions, you're going to have multiple journeys. Within the life, you're going to have multiple journeys. But maybe it is all just one grand journey, right?
One great journey.
Yes.
What I love about this is, yes, I really am quite analytical and I lean that way and all of that, but I am quite woo too in such ways as my father visits me as a white butterfly. I know it's my because when I garden, he floats around me and he goes from plant to plant to plant with me. And he's done that since the week after he passed. My mother, we had a contentious relationship of sorts. And on her deathbed, I said, you can come back and visit if you want, but don't haunt me. Well, it's taken her quite a while to figure out how to fulfill that request. After she died, we shipped her to Oklahoma, where she was from, and for her burial. And we went to Oklahoma. My mother always said it never rains in Oklahoma. The weather is always hot, but it absolutely never rains. Well, when we went back for her funeral in the first 3 days, there was a hurricane there was a flood, not a hurricane, I'm sorry. There was a tornado, a flood, and an earthquake.
Oh my gosh.
Now it's one of the number one earthquake centers of the country, but they'd never had any when I lived there as a child. So that was quite shocking. I recognized at that moment that she was having a little bit of a communications issue in figuring out how to communicate. And I thought, what did I do wrong? I don't know.
She was having a bit of a tantrum, it sounds like.
Yes, I don't know if any of that's true, but where it never rained, it flooded. They had to rescue people in boats. So, I mean, this was like,
you just reminded me of, so my mother and I had a contentious relationship for a lot of years too. And I decided to use the premise of quantum journeys hypnosis to try, and I shouldn't say try because I succeeded, but I wasn't sure if I was going to. I was like, well, if I can communicate with my grandfather who's deceased and my little brother who's deceased, I wonder if I can communicate with my mother's consciousness, even though she's not deceased. Because the consciousness doesn't live in the body. A part of it does, but like there's more, right? So I did. I went into a state of self-hypnosis and I requested to please have a conversation with my mother. We didn't get very far with this, but at least I was able to determine like, okay, this is possible. Then I had another session with Stephanie Conkle. She's like my hypnotherapist. So like we all have so she's the one that I go to. And I said, I think I can do this, right? Because I did it when I was in a state of self-hypnosis, but it's very hard to facilitate yourself in self-hypnosis. Like if you want to get a specific, thing going on, you have a goal. So I asked her, can you please help me facilitate this conversation with my mother's higher consciousness? And she said, sure. What I discovered was that my mother and we're like the best of friends at a soul level. We adore each other at a soul level. We intentionally incarnate together in roles where we will activate, is the word I'm going to use. Aggravate is really what it is, but like activate the crap out of each other so that we have to learn and grow. And we take turns sort of playing the bad guy. And so in this lifetime, she was like, okay, I'll play the bad guy. You did it last time. So I'll sort of sacrifice, your, perception of me so that I can activate the crap out of you and you can learn and grow from this. And I was like, wow. But like, it was almost like we were backstage, like watching the characters of Kryssa and Kryssa's mom doing their thing. And then we're back here going, yeah, you're doing a really good job. Like high five, Anyway, what's really interesting is that we have since started to have a good relationship and I no longer have any animosity whatsoever at all. And I can even tolerate her for like a whole 2 hours now. So there we go.
Well, all of that is understandable to me. And by the way, my mother has since visited me. This year she did as a monarch butterfly. My mother was always a fashion queen and always quite, that she was definitely the monarch. My dad is a white butterfly. He always wore white polo shirts. Very simple. My mother was a fashion queen. So she came as a monarch. Well, the point of this is it doesn't make any difference in anybody's reality if any of that is true or possible or provable or scientific. What you believe, Kryssa, is absolutely reality to you. What I believe is absolutely reality to me. And I believe that if we can help our clients bring out more of that reality in their imagination, it can be helpful. Don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, quantum science is catching up with some of this stuff. So I use it more as like a way to give people a permission slip to have whatever the experiences that they need to have, that they want to have, instead of them gaslighting their own selves because there's no scientific background and basis for this and they're too analytical and whatever. I'm like, well, hey, guess what? We now understand more about the science of consciousness and it's okay. So it's just a permission slip, right? Beautiful. But it happens to be a permission slip that we're finding a lot of empirical evidence to support in actual quantum physics.
I want to get
entanglement
real quick before we run out of time because she's got her hand up.
Yes. Oh, where did she go?
Thank you very much, Karen. Sorry, can you see me? Okay. I just wanted to say exactly, Kryssa, what you have just said. And one of the quantum physicists that I actually follow is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And,
Oh, I love him.
brilliant guy. But everything that you're saying is exactly what he says. And in terms of being a very respected physicist, it just, again, brings that, well, if you want to look for the proof is right here. Like, we don't actually have to wait that much longer because it actually is here. Whether you choose to actually go down that road with me is the actual question at this point, not whether or not it's actually provable, because it clearly already has been, as well as all the other things that we know in terms of, have we been visited by other uh, beings from other planets? Well, we know that to be true now. Like, like all the things, exactly what you
The
were saying.
government is no longer even trying to find that. They're like, yep.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a real curiosity. So that's all I just wanted to say. And I put his name there if anybody wants to look him up and you don't know who he is, because he's also hugely entertaining and has this lovely deep
Very
voice. So
Right, everybody. This has been wonderful, and we could go on for quite a while, I'm sure. But we are at that particular point where we have to begin to wrap this up. So I want to make sure before we go that I failed at the beginning to mention that the Galaxy of the Stars. We've got to let you know about the Galaxy of the Stars is coming September 14th and 15th. Go to the IMDHA website if you want more details about that. The quick and short description is that it is 2 days, four presenters, including Sheila Granger, who's going to talk about future-proofing your business, smart modern marketing technology. She's got some great stuff about AI and all sorts of good things that you can use. Chandra Peterson, who's going to be talking about working with children and families. Jackie Young, who we just heard from a moment ago about the partnership in parts therapy. And yours truly, my topic is Liftoff to Legacy, and it's going to be about growing and nurturing the hypnotist, how to keep growing, how to keep nurtured, how to find fulfillment in your practice, and finally, how to build a legacy. So there we go. It's going to be a great 2 days, and we're looking forward to it. So, Karen, it's been so lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you too, Michael.
And isn't it wonderful when we have a guest who has so much information to offer that you and I need to do very little other than sit back and really allow it to unfold. So what a beautiful evening we have had. And on the way out the door, we want to give everybody the opportunity to give Kryssa the send off that she deserves. And the way that we go about that is just inviting you all to open up your microphones and to say goodnight to Kryssa and thank her and give her just a sound bath of love and affection on the way out. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you next month.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Kryssa. That was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Kryssa. Love you, Kryssa.
Brilliant.
See y'all next month.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.